just have an example of these things. I was in the criminal justice system for over 35 years as an employee.
Yes, and that's important to know. It is.
I'll give you an example of what this gentleman and what she's talking about in the book. I was working in the Department of Corrections. I was head of the program committee, and each facility has a program. It operates like a city. You have to have workers, etc. So you think everybody going to jail, they're criminals, right?
Right.
Okay. So in the program, the inmates at Elmira filed a suit, a discrimination suit, because all the white inmates get the best jobs. Everybody's convicted of a crime. All the white inmates got the best jobs, and they won.
Wow.
So the Department of Corrections had to go around and make sure, but it still happens, that people who get the best jobs. And you talk about discrimination. I'll give you another example. There are residency laws here. Now, if African Americans want to have a picnic or all these beautiful parks out here, you can't do that if you live in a city, because there are residency laws to go to the pool here, to go to the pool there, to go to the pool. So if you look around and say there's no African Americans in the pool, or very few, those residency laws prevent that. So what Ms. Alexander is saying is there is a plethora of laws that are created like that that are not saying African Americans shouldn't be there, but the fact that's the effect of it. And I just want to say one other thing. You talked about the 14th Amendment. People in this country don't know how much they owe African Americans. The 14th Amendment was fought for by Frederick Douglass and the Radical Republicans and other African Americans. Now that's the reason why every person who's born in the United States is a citizen, because the African Americans brought that. The 13th Amendment freed us as slaves, but when we went to vote or got victimized, the sheriff would say, you know, I'd like to help you, but you're not a citizen of Georgia. As a matter of fact, you're not even a citizen of the United States. But African Americans fought for the law. So that's why every person who's born here is a citizen, and they owe, I think, African Americans a debt of gratitude with respect to that.
Thanks for bringing it up, and that's a major issue with our current immigration status. Willie, you were next.
Yes, I think us as African Americans has got relaxed because of certain laws that gave us certain rights and everything. I think we have to get back to the basics. I'm a community organizer. I did some organizing in the south end of Albany. You guys might be aware of a grassroots organization called The Village, where ordinary people come together and we take responsibility within our neighborhood, and we do things that needs to be done in our neighborhood. And I've noticed that when we look at an issue and we feel like it's an injustice to our community, we'll take it head on. And we won some major fights. We fought CDTA, we fought City Hall, and it was positive on our behalf. They tried to cut the summer job program, and we stood up. And so what I want, and we got bus service in the South End when we fought there, because it wasn't just African Americans who signed the petition, it was black, white, and brown, and yellow, that all of us came together as a people. That's why I call our organization The Village, because we are all responsible. But what's happening in the South End, if you look at the in front of the residents in the South End, there's no garbage cans. So you wonder why people throw garbage on the sidewalks. There should be garbage cans in our neighborhoods, so we have a petition going on about that. There is no community center for our kids, so they have no other choice but to hang out on the street corners. So we have an opportunity. When I was growing up, my mother used to sing this song, "Sweep Around Your Own Front Door." So we have to really come together as a people and fix our own problems, and then we can hold other people accountable. Yes, there's other accountabilities that we don't have control over, but we need to stand up as a people. And sometimes, I asked the question, Jacqui, what happened to the marches? What happened to the protests? We need to get back to the basics, and I call them the basics. And I'm ready to stand in front of the line.
Well, on some of them, I want to get a couple more questions. Willie and The Village are a great example of the accountability that you asked about in the back. It's also a great example of doing what you can and running into systemic problems. So when you have a person saying, well, this is what I want to do to achieve, oh, we have a law against that. Oh, you need a permit for that. Oh, you need to go here, or you need to go there. Being persistent and saying, okay, what is the system? Where's the papers? Let's fill them out. So that's something that in terms of when you run up against one of these walls, not to turn around and go, oh well, there it goes. And that's the learning part also, that the Warmth of Other Suns talks about people being ghettoized regardless of economic situation, where you could live, where you could work, and what access you had. And that's still happening. So regardless of whether you're making $10,000 or $100,000, your access to information is critical. And that's one of the things that we need to work on collectively. When someone has information, you share it. There were more hands over here. Oops, okay, Richard.
You talked a little bit about the idea of privilege, which I always think of, when I think of white privilege, I think of it as the other side of the mirror from discrimination. You know, there's the discrimination, which is these social constructs which take away from people. Then there's white privilege, which are these social constructs which give to people. And I think about all the ways that white privilege benefits me. It lets me walk through my neighborhood with relative impunity from the police, while my neighbors, who are people of color, are constantly shaken down. But something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is that it's in my own best interests to fight white privilege and to fight racism. It's not just about solidarity with people of color, it's also in the interest of white people to fight racism, because I think a lack of justice, you know, hurts everyone. And I think that that's like, I think that white people have to talk about that amongst ourselves, that it's really in our own interest to have these conversations with other white people and to think about these things and think about the way that, sure, we can say, oh, well, because of, I mean, we don't even articulate it, but we could articulate, sure, white privilege means I get all these things. I get to get a job when I want, I get to get paid better, I get to not be scared of the police. There are all these benefits which people don't really talk about. But I think that there's this flip side of it, which spiritually and just these other aspects that eat away at us living in a society where there's an obvious lack of justice.
You're absolutely right. Racism harms everyone. And one of the, you know, as a person of African descent, every time I'm being asked to be the example, to be the teacher, to be the token, that's where it's not working. Where white people say, you know, enough of this. And that we as white people need to do some work, need to give some things up, need to resist some things, and make sure that these laws get written, passed, and implemented accordingly. That is critical, because it's not going to be the people of color. Unfortunately, we are not powerful enough to turn it around. It has to be a concerted effort of everyone. Yes, Lady in the Purple.
I think though at the same time, I think also people of color, I think, need to let white people make some more mistakes, because I think part of the problem with the color blindness is that white people are too scared to have any conversations about it, because they don't have the language to talk about race without being terrified that they're going to be labeled a racist. Is that, I mean, and I don't know how you address the issue of color blindness without helping people and being tolerant of people making mistakes because they're trying to do the right thing but don't know how.
My personal response to that is get over it. That you're being uncomfortable, and I'm not being unkind.
No.
The idea of people saying, well, I'm not sure what to say, I'll make a mistake, make the mistake. It's better to make a mistake and ask for forgiveness. It's better to say, I'm concerned about this, I'm not quite sure how to address it, than to do nothing.
I agree, and I'm all for making mistakes. I do it all the time. but people have gotten very angry at me when I have asked what I thought were innocent questions. Can you explain this to me? And I get a response of, well, you just don't understand because you're white. And I'm like, okay, explain it to me.
Well, it's possible, and the other part is, I want you to hear this. My existence is not to educate you. So if there's a question that you ask me that I don't feel comfortable or willing to give you the answer, you need to get the answer someplace else. It's not that your question isn't valid. It could be something that is harmful to me at the moment. So when a person says, you know, you just don't get it, it's possible. Maybe that person can't answer it. You need to get the answers, is the critical part. And not get caught up in the person you ask the question of who chooses not to or cannot answer you. So as a white person, to ask the question, to get the information, there are books, there are videos, there are other white people to talk with, there are people of color to talk with. Just because one person says, oh, get out of my face, is not enough of an excuse for you to stop.
Do you think that there's a way to develop, I mean, is a resource for developing, because I mean, I'm not talking so much about individual conversations, but if we want to get beyond the color blindness, then I think we need to somehow have a system of tools, of a language for people to use, and I don't know how to do that.
There are some wonderful organizations, and I do anti-racism, anti-oppression, multiculturalism work as well. And there are a number of organizations who do, and there are people in this Capital District region who work on that and who do trainings. So if you wanted to sign up and just put a note next to that, I can contact you separately. Yes, sir. Right here first. I'm not ignoring you in the front.
I noticed when I read the book, there were at least 5 pages on drug forfeiture laws. I know you didn't mention that because
it's just so much.
There's so much in this book. It's amazing, just on 1 page. But she does hint at solutions in the back. She hints at different things that should be addressed. And she does lament the amount of time that was spent on affirmative action. It was like fiddling while Rome burned. And but in addition to the drug forfeiture, there's the amount of money, of course, the funding that they went in. All the police, the big cities have tanks, bazookas, a tremendous amount of equipment. And the other thing that she mentioned that she didn't address, I kind of forgot here at the moment. I lost my train of thought. But those are 2 things I'm bringing up.
Yeah, economics, the war on drugs, and racism is big business. There were billions of dollars that went into local and state and federal law enforcement offices to supposedly fight this war on drugs. And if you actually had a certain number of arrests, you got some money. If you actually went into a house and you got to take the house and sell it and make money for your office. If you apprehended vehicles, you could then use those cars or sell them off. It became big business. There were some cases in here where, and I forget the state, where a case where a grandmother lost her house because I think it was the daughter-in-law was smoking pot 3 blocks away. It wasn't even on her property. And she was arrested, she was put in prison, she lost her house, and basically, well, you should have known that somebody was going to have drug activity. And that was terrifying. For someone, okay, if someone gets a ride in your car, how often do you frisk them? I mean, do they have drug paraphernalia if you happen to come to a stop and they're holding something? In most states, you as the owner of that vehicle, you are subject to a fine and or imprisonment. But imagine, this was blocks away. It wasn't even on the premises. So the economic benefits to law enforcement to continue this sham war on drugs were huge. Money is always a contributing factor. So yes, if we change some of those and that people couldn't grab people's cars, boats, property, and we're not talking drug pimps. We're not talking the people with millions of dollars. We're talking the everyday citizen who lost their homes, cars, and trucks.
There's one issue I haven't heard mentioned that seems important to me, and that's the miserable negative effects of incarceration. Perhaps a young person, perhaps without hope, is convicted of a relatively minor offense and is sentenced to 4, 8, or 12 years in prison.
20.
When they go in, they're naive. When they come out, they're hardened criminals.
Yeah, this is part of the